their stance right now is that they're not gonna take a position on many things.
Oh, good.
I think helps.
Oh,
you know?
good. For you.
I think they should declare what they're in favor of and what they aren't, rather than just say, we're not even gonna.
Yeah.
Hi, Amy.
Sue, what do we have for attendance?
What do we have?
Yeah.
Do we have a quorum, do you mean, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, we have a quorum.
we have a call.
We do.
All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business, consider the 3/11 commission meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any adjustments, additions, or corrections? Hearing none, Amy, would you call the roll?
Happy to do so, Norm. James Ford. You're on mute, James.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Handy,
Yes.
Tom Keller,
Yes.
Tori Cornfield,
Yes.
Brian Langley,
Yes.
and Norm Higgins.
Yes. Welcome, Brian and James.
Good to see you.
Some comments from the commission chair. I wanted to just take a couple moments and express from my position, appreciation for all the work people are doing. It's really quite amazing. When I started making a list, I was going to go through the list, but I was afraid I would start missing a lot of things. But there are some highlights I think are important. The work of the mid-year reports, the work of the performance and finance committee, and the work that Lana and Amy put together on that is an extensive amount of work. And I want to make sure it doesn't go unrecognized. The work on the applications for a new school, the amount of time that Brian and Lee have put in on that, Amy and Lana. My part has been very small in that compared to what theirs has been. But I do see the work and it's continuing. That process is not completed yet. So we'll be asking you to give more of your time later this, I think next week, in fact.
Pending today's vote.
And there's a lot of other things that are ongoing as well. That I think are important. I see the professional development that Lana has organized for our schools, which is quite impressive. It used to be, I wondered if the schools would actually show up. But I don't think about that anymore. I think that relationship has been established. I think that's really important to work on public relations, getting to work with the Alliance, and on it goes. So this is a very busy time of year. I just want to say from the chair's perspective, I think it's important to recognize that. And thank you. Thank you what you've done. Most of all, thank you for what you're about to do. And the other thing I wanted to mention, you know, it appears we live in a rather contentious world at the moment. And everybody has the right answer, except we can't seem to figure out how to find it or put it together. So we're also operating in that environment. And I think that puts an enormous pressure on us. But I think if we stay focused on what we really stand for, we're going to do well. So with that in mind, James, would you read our vision and mission?
Yes, I will. The vision of the Maine Charter School Commission is that innovative public charter schools will provide Maine students with an equitable opportunity for an excellent education where students are valued, supported, and challenged. The mission of the Maine Charter School Commission is to authorize, monitor, and support innovative public charter schools that provide a dynamic, high-quality education for every student.
And I think if we stay focused on that and remind ourselves of that, then we'll do fine. Oh, thank you for indulging me. So we're gonna move on from there. Any adjustments to the agenda?
Nope.
Okay, committee reports, school performance committee?
Yes, we discussed the MOXIE school and their application and the questions we have after reading the application. And we want to be ready. We want these questions to be ready for the interview, the in-person interview with the school. Let's see, we heard from Lana what the next steps are in the process of picking the school. Amy gave us an update on 2 data projects that she's working on. We found both of them very useful. Which I hope she'll tell everybody what they are, because I think they're really good. And we heard ideas for carryover spending. And we will add to those ideas next time we meet. Anything else you want to add, Tom, Jim?
That's good.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions? Comments?
Can Amy tell about her?
I was just texting her that question.
Okay.
I heard you, Tori. I'd be happy to give just a quick update on those projects if you'd like me to. First of all, one of the things that we work on a monthly basis is taking a look at each of the public charter schools in Maine to see the students that are exiting the portfolio, as well as students that are enrolling. And we do this on a monthly basis to show that, you know, students are exiting, but we're also enrolling throughout the school year as well. That project, we break down exited students by a number of demographics, and as things pop out at us that look maybe abnormal, things that don't look like they've looked throughout the years, we will reach out to schools to kind of get the reason why. So, for example, you know, 4 students unenrolling as sophomores from a school in 1 month would seem abnormal. But when you reach out to find out why, you realize that they're all part of the same family, which makes sense. So that's one of the projects that I shared with the school performance committee last week. And again, that's something that we look at on a monthly basis, and we share with the committee, you know, a handful of times a year. The second data project that we've been working on is kind of a side-by-side comparison of the things that are charter schools are required to do versus things that a traditional public school are required to do. And we broke that out into several different categories. So it's assessments, it's NEO reporting for the MDOE, it's certification, it's finances. And it's a quick visual side-by-side to show that Maine's public charter schools are indeed asked to do the same things that traditional public schools in the state of Maine are asked to do, in addition to a wide variety of other type of monitoring type activities. So it's a little bit of an ongoing data project, really spurred by requests from commission members, and we'll continue to kind of fine tune that and have it available as people ask questions.
And the reason these 2 are so important is because each came from criticism that I have heard and you have heard many times. A, that the charter schools take money from their, you know, fall count, and then people leave charter schools and they keep the money, and it's just not fair, where the public school is getting more students in all the time, you know, whoever moves into town. And the other criticism is that charter schools are required to do less in terms of assessment and other things. So it's important that we have this information at our fingertips.
Thank you, Amy, for doing the work. We appreciate it.
You're
And
welcome, Norm.
thank you for Performance Committee and other members, I think, for asking those questions. I think what I walked away when we talked about the executive committee is that in fact, we're expecting more from our schools, not less, particularly when it comes to measuring performance in a number of different ways. And I'm quite sure that that's not the common perception. It wasn't mine, so
Sure.
so thank you. Nothing else? We'll move on to Finance Committee.
Sure.
Brian?
Okay, the Finance Committee met on April 3rd, and our key topics included updates on the community regional charter schools building projects, financial planning, budget projections for fiscal year 2026, and school finance monitoring. Travis from CRCS provided an update on the school's efforts to secure a new site for its building project. The CRCS identified a 40-acre lot off the Trafton Road in Waterville as a potential site after previous options were deemed unsuitable due to wetland issues. The site is zoned commercial as part of a larger development area. Their USDA loan application, they plan to apply for a $20 to $21 million USDA loan. The application process will take approximately a year with contingencies such as due diligence periods and enrollment data requirements. Their projected timeline agreement with the seller expected within weeks. Enrollment data collection by May. Amendment submission to the commission by June. Groundbreaking anticipated after the loan closure in 2026, with doors opening in the fall of 2027. Financial consideration, construction costs are estimated at $325 per square foot with additional developer fees, utility expenses factored into the budget. CRCS is also addressing incurred costs related to architectural and legal services. We expressed our appreciation for their transparency as they come back pretty much every month with updates on what they're doing. Next, we moved on to budget projections for 2026. Reviewed 2 draft budget scenarios based on whether the commission remains under its current structure or transitions to a body politic classification. We looked at key points. We looked at revenue projections. Total revenue is projected to increase by $64,000 due to higher state funding and an enrollment increase of 100 students across the charter schools. Under expense projections, the current structure expenses are expected to rise by $106,000 due to salary increases of 5%, benefit stipends for staff, and a newly allocated $40,000 contingency fund for legal expenses. Transitioning to the body politic structure would reduce expenses by approximately $54,000 due to savings in the fees charged by the staffing services. Carryover funds, the commission anticipates starting FY26 with $430,000 in carryover funds. Depending on the structure adopted, it would tap into these funds by either $82,000 in the current structure or $28,000 under the body politic. We talked for a fair amount of time about a legal contingency planning, creating a contingency fund for legal expenses. It was proposed to address any potential litigation or unanticipated legal fees, creating a fund and dropping some money in there and just parking it in case it was needed. School finance monitoring, updates on individual schools and their financial health were shared. Acadia Academy submitted its audit late but received a clean option. Means the Maine Academy of Natural Sciences projected surplus for FY25 due to reduced enrollment under its threshold program, plans to increase enrollment over the next 2 years while managing lower state subsidies. Concerns over potential challenges in funding school lunch programs, and under the Baxter Academy requested an extension until April for audit submission. And Let me see, we talked about carryover funds to avoid excessive accumulation. And, Lana gave us a list of options, about 6 different options, and we kind of voiced our opinions on which ones we liked. And then I'd say that's about it.
I'd say that's a lot.
It was thoughtful, thorough.
The question
Yeah.
I have, will the committee come forth with some recommendations on the carryover?
Yes.
I think
that's
we were all
fine.
over the place, weren't we, a little bit, Lana? So I don't know if we were any help to you or not.
Certainly not today. Those recommendations won't be forthcoming, but yes, eventually. We hope to vote on the budget next month,
Okay,
and all of the committees right now, including school performance, are considering those carryover fund options.
great.
And
Thank
I'm going to
you.
bring that to schools and school boards as well.
Right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Any, Tom?
Brian, did I hear you say that the threshold enrollment is dropping at means?
Yeah, I think that's what it's, my notes I have there. Maybe
I wonder, do you know why? What?
So Brian,
Yeah,
can I
you'd
jump
better,
in there?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they decreased it this year because of staffing. So they maintained a wait list this year, but they didn't have the staff to staff it fully with the student demand that they had. So next year and the year after, they're gradually increasing it.
Okay.
Yes.
Good, I will make sure that population gets service.
Yeah, they do too.
Other questions? Comments? All right. We'll move on to the executive committee. Primarily, we reviewed some of the key points from both the performance committee and the finance committee. So obviously, we won't repeat those. One of the things I think that we're watching carefully is the proposed legislation to allow us to change the structure of the commission. That's still at the legislative request level. So it's still obviously at the revisor's office. I called, I think it was Friday, and talked to him there, and it's pending. So we all know that.
Probably drafting amendments more than anything else right now.
Yeah, so it has a fairly low number, so I'm surprised it actually hasn't been processed yet. But so we're watching that as well as other legislation and trying to keep an eye on what's happening globally as well. And all of that's pretty challenging, I think, for the uncertainty that it poses for our schools, I think, more than maybe it does the commission. I guess we'll just have to wait for time to play that out. So, anything else, Lana, you can think of, executive committee?
Not everything else I think was covered by Tori and Brian.
Okay. So item D, ad hoc new school application review committee.
Brian, do you want to start with this one? Or would you rather I did?
Yeah,
Go for it.
no, why don't you start with that?
Oh, got it.
I
Okay,
don't
happy
think
to.
I don't think I spent the time on these notes like I did on the,
The finance one. No, I'm happy to. So the ad hoc review team committee did meet, who is looking at the application process for the new school. So the review team, and I echo Norm's thanks to Brian and Lee for just being such thoughtful partners in this process. We've engaged in a very structured process, as you all know, that allows for merit-based decision-making. That process included a detailed review of each application, a team consensus meeting, so the ad hoc committee, a capacity interview with the founding teams of the proposed schools, and then another consensus meeting with the review team based on sort of all the available evidence we had up to that point. We evaluated the applications using a really robust rubric, which is a public document on our website for anyone who's interested in looking at that. So based on that thorough review, the review team is prepared to make a recommendation to advance a finalist when we get to that part of the voting agenda later on in the agenda. And I want to just take a moment to make it clear, and we can say this again later in the agenda, but that today's vote is not an endorsement of the school as our next charter school. That vote, if advanced today, would happen next month, but rather today's vote is to move the applicant forward in the process for a commission interview and a public hearing, which would happen later this month. So I'm happy to provide more information about next steps, specifically when I get to my update section of this agenda. And then we'll have that review team recommendation when we get to the action item further on today. I guess the last thing I would say, Brian, feel free to add in anything else here, is that initially we had 2 applicants in the process. However, one applicant, the Wabanaki Hybrid Charter High School, decided to withdraw their application and refine it for future consideration if that opportunity should arise again, where they'd be able to do that. And so today we will only be considering the MOXIE school as a finalist. Would you add anything else, Brian?
No, just that it's a very, very thorough process. The interviews with both of the sets of the teams that they sent, it's it's quite a process. So enjoyed them both very much. So people that are very vested in education of kids. So while it's thorough, it's quite enjoyable at the same time.
Thank you.
I agree.
Right up until the fire alarm.
Literally, there was a fire alarm during
Oh.
capacity interviews.
Okay. Anything else? Just a
Uh,
reminder of our meeting next week.
If the school is moved forward
Right.
today in the vote, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I do my executive director
Okay.
updates, I'll do a more thorough kind of
Okay.
explanation around that.
All right, so completes this.
That's it for review
All
committee.
right, so public comment. I just want,
Who's this hand up?
I was gonna, just on the ad hoc committee, Lee and Brian have certainly done incredible amount of work just looking at those 2 applications. But I also want to point out that the commission has quite a valuable resource in the consultants. So David Hartman, although I wasn't part of that this time, but just it is so beneficial to have that outside look and to have funds to pay for that outside look.
well, it's, you and I both know, serving on the search committee, how valuable he was to us in that process. And you're right, and it reminds me that it's so easy for us to forget Joe, but he's quietly in the background, but that's a.
He's here with us today.
There he is. Well, so he's an invaluable resource
Right.
for us.
Yeah.
And allows our finance committee to go deep into the finances. So appreciate that, Joe. Want to thank. Yeah,
And Joe reviewed both applications and was present at the capacity interviews to ask questions as well. He's been incredibly helpful.
yes. Thank you, Tom, for bringing that up. I think sometimes we forget that. And having the resources to do that.
It's amazing. It's invaluable. I mean, it's
You wouldn't be making an editorial comment about some other organization to serve on.
I would never do that.
No, I didn't think you were, so. Anyway, public comment. So public comment is not a time to add grievances about employees. I could read the whole script here. If I need to, I will. But if anybody has complaints, please direct them in writing to our executive director, and we'll respond appropriately. I think summarizes it. So during public comment, I think it's important to note that we are here to listen. A public comment is not a time for us to engage in the debate, but it's important to hear diverse perspectives, and that's why we have a public comment. So do we have anyone that would like to speak public comment today?
We usually start in the room. I don't know.
We're all good over here.
Okay.
Campers. Oh, sorry. You have one?
So I think Elizabeth is gonna jump on.
Great. Maybe we can transition to Zoom.
Okay, we'll turn to Zoom.
Amy, I'm going to turn it
Hi,
over to you.
everybody. Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to share out a couple things that are happening at CRCS. Is it okay if I share screen for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. You should be all set, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Okay, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's going on at one of our campuses this week. We have a career week going on. It is extremely exciting, and the way that we do it is during our traditional elective block, we invited community members and family members to come in and share out their career. So instead of learners accessing their traditional electives, instead they sign up to see some of these professionals and get to hear about each of their careers. It's been very well supported by our community and our families. Our learners are super engaged, and every single day there's something for everyone. In addition to the guest speakers that are coming in and the presenters, they're also doing quite a bit of work in P2C. So we're matching that up with the new math/career program that we have. So learners are able to visit these professionals and then go to P2C and look up more information about the career and possibly tag it for something that they'd be interested in. So I wanted to share this. I'm really excited about the number of volunteers and community members. Like I said, we have over 25 people that are coming in this week from almost every one of the career pathways. So pretty exciting. The last thing, or I can stop right there if you have any questions about our career week.
PC, whatever that.
What was the acronym, Elizabeth? PTC or something like that you used?
P2C. Yes, I believe I spoke with you about this a couple of weeks ago or a couple of times. Pathways to Careers. It's, the program that we're using that ties in math skills with careers. It also has a component that allows learners to create a My Career page where they can tag careers they're interested in, and it has a career library where they can log in and check out different careers, videos about them. It'll also have information as far as what kind of education you need in order to achieve that career or go for that career. And it also will tell you the likelihood of employment. It'll tell you in the state of Maine how many positions were posted this year in that career and give you that sort of information as well. So after kids attend these seminars, they're able to use that resource to get more information.
Anybody have any questions? Tom?
How many Batman do we
Well,
need?
that was my question. You stole it.
I know. Isn't that awesome? So Batman is a gentleman that lives here in Maine that has created an entire costume on his own of Batman. And he makes a living going around and doing cosplay events and doing parties. And so he has a small business around this, this costume that he created. So we have so many kids that are interested in, building and design and fashion and, entrepreneurship. I think that it'll be really interesting to have. He comes Friday. So excited about Batman.
So Tom, what's your schedule look like on Friday? Huh?
Yeah.
I have to wait for the bat signal, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
I couldn't
Be
choose
be
between
looking
that
out
and
for
dog
that.
training.
Yes. Well, don't tell Travis. We did have a dog in the building yesterday.
Ah,
Sorry, Travis.
We don't know where he is. We won't tell him.
Yeah, don't tell him. It was perfect though. It was great.
Thank you very much. We don't mean
Yeah,
to
you're welcome.
make light of
No,
it.
it's great. Thanks.
It's really important work. We appreciate that. Anything else on public comment? Anyone?
Actually, Susan is working with an escalated learner right now, so I'll share out for her.
Okay.
So with CRCS, our enrollment is really important and connectedness with families. And the one thing that, with COVID, our parent group had a kind of dwindled a little bit, and we're trying to build capacity. So recently we did an event that pulled all three buildings together because we're trying to really pull families together. And we did a game night, and we had a ton of board games. People brought board games, but what ended up happening were several families that don't normally get the chance to connect because of our geographic region. They were exchanging phone numbers. They were working together and it was a good community building and that relationship piece. So we had a huge turnout, and the families want to do it again.
Great.
So,
Okay, anything else? I will close the public comment
There,
section.
there might be, Amy, anyone else?
There is nobody else
Okay.
waving at me here in the waiting room, so I think we're good.
All right, I'm gonna
Thanks.
close that section and move to presentations. So, Anna, I see you have had a little exciting experience in your lifetime.
Little presentation situations.
Do you think would you mind coming up just to be a little
yes,
closer to the mic?
Part of the team there.
Yeah, come on up. We even have a pile of candy here for you. if you keep going.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
It's all for you.
I will say that, I figure going into the building that the most common subject of conversation is parking.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, when the session, you know, it
Yeah.
gets a little tight.
that's why we can think.
I thought there was a bill that brought all these people. This is more than the usual. I mean,
It's
the other
exciting.
day was immunizations,
Right.
so that must have brought a lot of people.
Welcome.
Thank you
It's
so
great
much,
to have you-
everybody.
it's Great to have you here.
It's really lovely to be here. Madam Amy, would you mind sharing, or Susan, sharing, the ability to?
Yeah, you should be all set, Anna.
Okay. So we at Baxter Academy really are so excited about the ability to look at real world problems. And it was our energy this year, and frankly, with the great support of the Charter Commission, to take that question of what is real world now and have our students look outside of the greater Portland area and look at solving problems in the greater world. We have many young people who come from Angola, the DRC, we have folks from Kenya, etc. So I had this really marvelous opportunity to go with the Partners for World Health on one of their medical missions to Kenya, Western Kenya, and participate in a research project and exploration around a really exciting project that our kids are working on, a wheelchair that can be used outside, out of the hospital situation. And there were some incredible learnings for me, both in terms of healthcare, in terms of wheelchairs specifically, but in terms of research projects in developing countries, and frankly, my own leadership skills. It was an extraordinary trip. And frankly, the way I describe it is it's sort of outside of abject fear, which I never experienced. It was every other human experience for me in a 3-week period of time. So it was very, very intense. And I'm glad to be able to share that with my kiddos and my faculty and my community. So as I said, I went with Partners for World Health. They are an organization who collect and share medical equipment that comes from places like Maine Medical that is going to be thrown out, but is in perfectly good shape. And they will take it. I think that at this point, they're at about 60 different locations. So that includes Gaza and Ukraine, Bangladesh, and in this case, Kenya. So specifically, you can see in the top left-hand corner, we were in Kisumu, which is the second largest Bondo, and looking out, you look across that body of water, you're going to be looking at Tanzania, which is a country name that I've mispronounced.
Tanzania.
I've mispronounced that for my entire life.
I've never heard Tanzania. There you go.
Well, there you go. Exactly. These are the moments, right? And so we conducted 4 clinics, visited 6 hospitals, distributed more than 500 pounds of medical supplies, conducted 250 interviews, and distributed 250 birthing kits. And I was able to lead educational programming for those women, provided primary care for over 800 patients, and set in place the review process for the wheelchair project and established plans for a prosthetics project for next year. So this is something that, I think that's always the question, right? Like, what's next? What's sustainable? And it's really, really exciting for our kids to be on that path. In terms of the wheelchair project, we had Sonny Stutzman, who has been on the Baxter faculty now for 10 years plus. He was one of the founding teachers, and Caleb Lyford and Lucas Parento, who they are fantastic students, but they also have a sort of a twinkle, and they have been leading that work in the school. But I think a really important piece of this, and I'll talk more about this, but a really important piece of this is it's not just a construction project, but is requiring them to do research about the needs of work in the third world country. Actually, I have a problem with the third world title because Kenya, being a post-colonial country, is so incredibly corrupt that there's no progress being made. But they are working. Sonny has worked both in CAD classes himself and with another teacher, using the wheelchair as a problem set. And it's been an opportunity for me to talk to. I've presented to our faculty, I've taught in classes, and I presented at a board meeting, and I'm going to be presenting to Rotary clubs moving forward too. So it's much bigger than any particular single moment. For those of you, I know some in the room have been to Kenya and others may have not. It is a totally chaotic place.
You haven't been to India.
This is true. That's next on my list, though.
Well, Kenya's organized next to India. Oh.
I mean, it's not funny. I'm sure it's real. But this, this is one of those moments when, we have kids at Baxter who are really involved in fast fashion and, going to a market, you just see piles of clothes that have come from Goodwill. And, then sort of rice being sold on the side, and cows who frankly are the smartest cows I've ever met because they're let out in the morning and they just come home at night. It's like, I don't know how, right? Like, at any rate.
That's how I get home at night.
There's a bell.
I ride a cow.
Ride a cow. I like it. I mean, one of the first learnings for me is just how important it is to have a partner in a place like, India, absolutely. Kenya, you show up, you need to have someone on the ground who can show you where to go and introduce you to folks and get you into places. This Mainland Relief Hospital is sort of a middle of the road hospital. I was telling folks, I just had these fantasies about bringing one of my higher level engineering classes and just dropping them in for a couple of days and saying, you find a project here. Because it's not that any of our kids are smarter, it's that if they were working on a project for a year, they could come up with so many interesting and cool things to do that would, and various different kinds of infections around the IV bags and mosquito netting. And, it's like these really basic things. You're walking into a room where there are 9 sick people. Like at the end of this room, one of them has malaria, 2 of them have these terrible infections. They're all just crunched in together. And you say, how how do you walk out of this space? And answer being, you don't. Yeah. This very sweet gentleman, I will say, was possibly one of the most disorganized people I've ever met, but he was running the hospital, and you know what, like, God bless him. So the first, I think it's sort of a requirement, and Tori, you may have had this experience as well, but when you go to a faraway place in a very, very poor country, it's sort of required that you go to an orphanage. That's just sort of the thing that
Or a
happens.
school.
Or a school, absolutely. So this particular orphanage received a lot of money from USAID, and they aren't right now. You know, there is water that's not being refilled. You know, there's been a drought for 4 months, you know, and the owner of the directors was like, I don't know where this stuff is going to come from. And as you say, there's my school. Rote learning in these environments. One thing that was fascinating to me about sort of the American piece of this is that one of the people in our group insisted on bringing wool hats, which seemed so ludicrous to me. But as it turns out, it does get chilly at night, and the kids really like those hats. So, you know, shame on me for judging, right? So the first clinic that we set up was in Abimbo, which is a mining enclave. It is extraordinarily dangerous and probably the poorest place I've ever been. I've been in Guatemala City ghetto, and that's pretty poor. But this, the mine is extremely dangerous. The women spend their days leaching gold out of the rocks that are pulled out of the mine. There is a grinding machine that is going on all the time. So it's sort of pollution on every level. And in fact, just about a week and a half ago, the mine collapsed, and I think 3 or 4 people died. They drowned in the mine, which is like, just stop. But at any rate, we were really privileged to be in that space. And I laughed about Dr. John because, you know, he set up the tent in exactly the wrong place, and, you know, this isn't going to work. And so then, you know, everybody picked up the tent and we just walked our way across. So that was very poignant moment. So, you know, I've heard people say about Americans that they don't know how to wait. And I will say that in these environments, people have the patience to wait for hours and hours. Some of these women pregnant, many months pregnant, walking for hours, and then coming and sitting in the sun in these plastic chairs were so uncomfortable. And just to be seen in the primary care clinic or to be interviewed and to receive a birthing kit. Now, just a note that, you know, you think about when you go to the hospital, you need hospital supplies are purchased for you through your insurance or through the government. Well, in Kenya, that doesn't happen. So these birthing kits we were distributing included surgical supplies and really basic necessities so that these women could have their babies, which is why they made these effort. You know, I'm standing there with these sort of been used minors who don't quite know what to do with this chick. But they've been working in the mine for 5 years, just waiting, you know, for the moment they were gonna strike gold. So then there's this mine collapse. And then there's this very sweet lady who I was particularly touched by her because she's old. And in this environment, you know, how extraordinary is that moment, right? So she comes down and, you know, we're trying to triage her and, you know, and her joints ache and her feet hurt. And, you know, she's just lots of consternation. We're trying to figure out how old she is. And she tells me she's 38 and her grandson informs us that she's like 90. 98. Like, okay, that's, you can be 38 if you want, that is just fine. And she was calling me her granddaughter. It was ridiculous. So I spent a lot of time talking to these ladies and talking about different trimesters and the risk factors. I did that for weeks, and what an extraordinary learning experience, you know, to be able to have these really intimate conversations. And to be collecting data when you don't have access to a computer. It's super windy and people are distracted and it's really loud. So what is the quality of that data? I think it's, you know, you think, okay, so here we hand out iPads, right? And we can count on that data, yes or no? But good Lord, another learning moment, I would say. There were, I won't hold on this for too long, but there were a lot of folks who came with very significant medical problems that we couldn't treat because it was so dirty. You know, we couldn't give shots, we couldn't do any kind of surgery because it would be infection. So great. So then moving into a fishing village, I thought it important, particularly for our kiddos when I was doing this presentation, for them to hold the fact that this is where people were getting their water from in town. They were just walking with these enormous containers of water. And, you know, I end up saying it again, I'm sure. I think I saw 10 wheelchairs during my fire. There's no way if you are differently able to get out of the house and you look on those roads, like how are you going to get anywhere? So then the next place we went was a fishing village, which was incredibly beautiful. And in fact, the background, you can see Tanzania and Uganda would be on the right-hand side of this picture. This is where refugees come from those two countries, and this is how they plan on making their fortune and having their babies, because in Kenya there is birthright citizenship. You know, there's an idea that Kenya is the land of plenty. It turns out in these fishing villages, people are starving because they have no refrigeration. And so they have to sell the fish same day, rock bottom prices, and they don't have the food. This is what we were looking at in terms of our clinic. We had a couple pigs walking around, the fish, and some cows who were, you know, it was like their farm and we were just living in it. So then we moved into one of our 6 hospitals. And this is where it started to be really evident that the healthcare system was in a total state of you could even further collapse, because the hospital itself was empty and the lines outside to see us were full. Because they're in fact the insurance system that had moved from being a public system last November to being one that it was private and run by somebody's brother, hadn't reimbursed the hospital since last November. So people were working at no pay, which is disastrous. In this particular picture on the right, I had a total appreciation for one side of what our teachers experience. And then there was the other side. But in this particular moment, it was the end of the day. A number of these ladies had walked for hours to come. They had been waiting around for hours and they were having none of it. They were just looking at me like stone-faced. And I had this appreciation for what it's like teaching math after lunch. I was like, that's what they go through. Now I understand. And I will admit that I just went and cried afterwards because it was, you know, I was like, what are you gonna do for these people? Like, what? They were not happy with me being there. Not at all, not at all. And so, and then on the other side, we had, it too was the end of the day and I was losing the crowd. And so I asked, there was a young woman there who had just learned that she was pregnant and an older woman who was having her sixth baby. And it was actually at this point, it was fewer, but we had about 20 women. And so I could see that I was losing them. And I said, okay, I need you to play your favorite. Someone find your favorite song. And they did, and people started singing, clapping, and you know, the mama of, you know, of 6 had she was giving advice, and they were sort of doing this amen about kids like kicking you in the lungs when you're 3 months pregnant, and it was really, really beautiful. And at the end, they sang a song in gratitude to me, which I don't think is for my teachers, but I'm sure sometimes it feels good. So the Say County Hospital is our partner for the wheelchair project. And I just included this slide because everything in the hospital is in English. And if you're poor, you don't speak English. The only exception is the sexual violence poster on the right that is also in Swahili. But in these care facilities, I don't know what you do if you're, well, and I think the answer is you don't have the money, so you're not there. The number of births that take place in this hospital, 323 in the month of January last year, 344, and it's like extraordinary numbers of babies people. So what is it that Lucas and Caleb were up to? So they have been working on a design that has the wheels in front and the big wheels in front and smaller wheels in the back. This is their, they wanted me to use this as the vision of their prototype. They're actually going to have the final sort of testing version in a couple of weeks. And they have added a number of components to it. There are a couple of pieces. One is that it's very, very cheap to produce. 2, that it's strong and easy to repair, that you're using. I mean, there are bicycles all over the place in Kenya. And so to be able to find pieces that, and you can weld, there are ways of getting stuff welded. That's a common thing to have access to. So what is it that is actually a sustainable product that can be replicated? I'm really, really excited for Lucas and Caleb because Dr. Kennedy, who is the head of prosthetics in this hospital, is going to be talking with the boys on Friday by Zoom. And then there are actually going to be a couple of other, there's actually another class that it's going to be sitting in on that call. But I mean, what an amazing experience for our kids, you know? And Dr. Kennedy is also, he's just really jazzed up about doing prosthetics with them next year. Because the prosthetics that they do in these more remote hospitals are made with plaster as opposed to fiberglass. And so learning how to make them out of 3D printing, which there are 3D printers that are pretty resilient. They're industrial quality and not terribly expensive, but not at such a risk of getting broken, which is of course what we worry about, is sending some fabulous piece of equipment that breaks in a week and a half. And Kisumu, you have access to, you can get things shipped to you, definitely, if you need. As I said, the number of wheelchairs was astonishingly empty. There was a wheelchair that I saw in a hospital that was capacity 500 pounds. Some very well-meaning American had donated. I did not see any 500-pound cats. Not even close. That was just silly. And then the hospital was designed, you can't see this in the middle, but the hospital was designed so that if you were in a wheelchair, it was on such a slant that you couldn't stop yourself. It was on a hill. And so if you picked up any steam, you wouldn't have been able, yeah, who knows what that was about. So as I said, you know, we're excited to be continuing with the prosthetics project and collaborating with our other partners in the community. I will say outside of Partners for World Health, USM has been a great resource. The boys were over at SMCC last week using their equipment, which is, I think, really, really important. They have connected with Wheelchair Foundation in California. So just using this as a way of teaching kids that collaboration is essential in doing good work in the community. And, you know, my thing is that we don't teach our kids how to think, but it's really what to think about. And, you know, this kind of a project is a marvelous mechanism for doing that. I think that's you know, and I will say that in Tori, I'm sure that you have this experience as well, that you have to build in good solid half an hour before you plan on getting anything done, just to, you know, have gratitude for the kindness of the Kenyan people and the welcome that people have shared with you. And just build that in. It's a lovely habit, I will say. And I will also say this was something that you really to get used to, which is in addition to everything being half an hour to 45 minutes late, nothing was a problem. If you sit, it's not a problem. Whatever you ask, like, it's not a problem. And you ask me an A, B, and C question, but it's not a problem. And it has actually no connection to whether or not something
It is a problem.
And people spoke in very quiet voices to us. And we just, I think that
But laugh easily.
I do think I mean, the revolution was in 62, and that'll do a number on a country. So we actually, it's very interesting. I was talking to Revision Energy this morning, and the model that was done in a hospital north of Nairobi, where it was actually a German solar power company who set up a relationship with this hospital who was paying the solar company the cost of power as they were building new solar panels, so that essentially they were buying the product of the solar. And so the German company was not needing to donate enormous amounts of money. And then at the end of the project, the hospital owned the solar. In Zaire, they spend $10,000 to $15,000 a month. I mean, it's really global power prices. They pay nurses $350. So if that just gives you a context. And then at the end of the trip, Elizabeth McClellan is fantastic, the Partners for World Health. And she introduced me to a member of parliament who I'm sure, as we say, is a member of parliament who is not corrupt. Because we spent 3 weeks complaining about how corrupt everybody was. Oh God. But he is from Garissa, which is northern Kenya on the Somali border, which is extraordinarily dangerous right now. But in the process of building a maternity ward in a hospital and working with Elizabeth in that. But because of him, I met this woman from Girl Kind who wants to do a podcasting collaboration with girls at Baxter. And also do a Girls in STEM project, which, you know, you think about in ways of engaging young women in STEM, you know, we have to be creative about it and just continue to try different angles and ways of engaging youngsters. So this is. Yeah. I just. This is actually where all the jewelry comes from for a mere $10. Plus, I came home on a Sunday afternoon. I was at work on Monday and I thought, woohoo, no jet lag. And then, as you probably also know, because it took a couple of days. Had a board meeting on Tuesday and then Wednesday, it was like, I was cooked. But what a privilege and a gift to be able to do that. And so excited to bring it to our kids. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Anna.
What a trip.
When we visited, I think many of you remember, Sonny Stutzman is one of my former students.
Yeah.
As well as his parents.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. And I left before we get any further. But he's a wonderful young man. In fact, his daughter's a competitive what do you call surfer.
Internationally.
International.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And as I like to joke with him, I was at his wedding, but I wasn't at his divorce, so. But he's a wonderful, wonderful man. I've also been to Kenya. Well, I was there on a tourist trip, and when I went, we were informed that we shouldn't go because of the military action. And so most of the places we stayed weren't very many people. And we were under military escort everywhere we went. So you didn't get a chance to see a lot of this. But it's a beautiful country.
It is,
Gorgeous.
and sort of part two is a piece that I was able to share with my family, which is that we did go on safari for the last 4 days after all of this, and we had a Maasai guide, and he was also a little bit of a nut. And so he was so good at tracking animals. And so I have so many pictures of, you know, and it's the animals who grow up.
Yeah.
Being around these vehicles, so they're, you know, you have a lion, it's just looking at you like in the yawns. So we were fortunate to be able to do that. And it's a wonderful kind of balance to the chaos.
It is.
Just
It's,
the intensity of this poverty.
my wife's favorite moment is we did a balloon ride at sunrise over the Serengeti Plains.
Boy.
You know what, I did want to.
It's
Incredible.
yeah. But I understand the jet lag.
Yes.
It's forever getting back. So
I
anyway,
was told by a board member not to give any big speeches or make any big decisions. I had a couple of days grace period.
okay, anything else?
Great.
All right, Lana? Oh, Tom.
UNE has a relationship with Ghana, particularly around medical care. I don't know if just many of you know that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they take their physician assistant students there once a year and work in the capital as well as some little tiny village up in the hills. My daughter went through them. She tells some fabulous stories. The other thing is David Champlin, who is the department chair of biology at USM, has a STEM Sisters program that he used to run, which was mostly, you know, new Mainers working with other senior level women students to try to make that connection, to keep them in sciences. I don't know if he's still doing that program, but it's
I'll find out.
it's a really nice one.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that I was on the board of visitors for USM. So, just really, that's a real privilege. So I'll ask.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much. What a
Yeah.
trip.
I was feeling pretty full.
Glad you're back.
That's what others have said. Like, I was so safe. I was really,
Yeah.
you know, people were caring for me.
Thank you for sharing. Should we keep going?
Mhm.
Okay. So next we have executive director update. I'm on. All right. So nothing to top what Anna's been talking about, but I do have a couple other school updates. So one for Maine Arts. Maine Arts is going to be having an event that is titled You Matter to Me, M-E, Maine, me, which is going to be in downtown Augusta on May 10th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay. And they are, going to be doing displays kind of all over downtown Augusta. There's performances happening, and they've invited all the other charter schools to participate. So I'm not sure who else is taking part in that, but it's on May 10th. I'll find out more information, but it sounds like it should be a really neat event. If anyone is in the Augusta area on that day. I'm going to speak up. I have 2 updates for MIVA. So congratulations, MIVA let us know that they were named the #1 best charter high school in Maine on the niche platform, NICHE, which is not a platform I'm familiar with, but I went on and there they were. So that is great for them. Congratulations to MIVA. And then MIVA also let me know that they are NCAA approved as of now, which means that they've been approved as a course or program. You know, they've been reviewed basically and deemed acceptable by the NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association, for meeting the academic requirements for student athletes to be eligible to compete in NCAA sports.
Good.
Something that had never even occurred to me is something you needed to be eligible for. So happy to hear that they are eligible for that. And then my final school update is for Fiddlehead. This is kind of an exciting one.
So wait a minute, let's stop for a minute.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what does
Yeah.
that mean for them? Does that because some of their students are premier athletes?
No, I think it means that their academic program meets the eligibility requirements for students to participate when they get to college in NCAA sports. So
But they're,
apparently not all high schools are eligible. Not all high school students are eligible based on what their academic programs are. And so MIVA's academic program enables students who graduate from MIVA to be eligible. That's my understanding. This was new information for me too. I'd never even thought about this as a eligibility requirement exercise.
do they have sports?
MIVA?
Mhm.
Not that I know of. I think that they have.
So
It's about their academic program.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
I don't understand how you get to being an elite collegiate athlete if you haven't been on.
Well, you know, I think with the virtual schools,
Well, that's what I was saying. Is it because some of their students are,
I see
are-
your question now.
Goodies.
I think.
Lana,
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I would just say Melinda's on and can probably explain
Melinda.
this
Hi,
much better than we
probably
can.
Probably better than I can. Go ahead, Melinda.
Yeah, so we had been on extended review status for quite a long time, and we decided to reapply for the eligibility for NCAA. For instance, we have a student, he actually participated in our renewal activities, but he's a star soccer player,
Yeah.
wants to
so
go
there's
to a
that.
Division II college. And so he's able to get that approval now. He's actually got it. Is eligible for athletic scholarships. But they are like our star tennis player years ago, Lana Mavor, who was quite famous in the state. She also got NCAA approval for Division I, but at the time we were not approved. So she had to apply as an individual. So at any rate, it just
Yeah.
really streamlines the process for people applying. You know, we don't offer sports, but we get
Right, got
plenty
it.
of student athletes.
Thank you for that,
That's
Melinda.
super helpful. Thank you, Melinda. Yeah, it's really exciting. So finally, for Fiddlehead, their second grade teacher has been nominated as Cumberland County Teacher of the Year. Her name is Sarah Giuliano, so we offer her luck in that process.
Terrific.
Okay.
That's great. That's all I have for schools. I do have a few organizational updates I'd love to take you through. So the first one, Amy, could you queue up that PowerPoint Great. So later on in our agenda, we are going to discuss, we're going to vote on the MOXIE schools potential move forward in our process as a finalist. So I wanted to give everyone a little bit of an idea of kind of where we are in the new school application process, and thought a couple visual slides might be helpful here. So Amy, you can take us forward. So this is quite small, but if the MOXIE school is approved as a finalist today, these are the next steps in the process up here on the board. So so today's April 8th, so that's the vote. So the next vote to move them forward as a finalist. The next piece would be on April 17th. We would have the commission interview. So that is the commission's opportunity to ask the founding applicant group questions. I've been collecting those questions from you already in anticipation of this pending vote today. That will be in person in this room, and we will have Zoom access, and that is a public meeting as well. The additional step that you would be voting to move them forward to complete today would be a public hearing. So update that actually will be on April 30th, not May 1st. So we can clarify that. And it'll be in the evening. And it'll be in the greater Portland area, because we like to have those public hearings in generally the area where the school is proposing that they would open. So I'm talking to USM and SMCC right now about space that we would potentially use for that, a lecture hall or an auditorium. Both have availability on that day. That is also something that commission members can attend in person or via Zoom. Testimony will be given in person or via Zoom. Our role during the public hearing, the commission's role is really to sit and listen to the public testimony. Then before May 13th, which would be the vote to approve the school, the ad hoc review team, so Brian, Lee, and myself would meet and have another consensus meeting. So based on the whole suite of evidence, we would then have up to that point the new school, written application, capacity interview, commission interview, public hearing. The review team would craft a recommendation whether or not to have that school move forward as a charter school. That recommendation would be brought to this body on May 13th for that vote, for the final vote. Any questions about just the timeline? Okay. We've gone over it before, but I think it's helpful to know. We just talked about this. So if the finalist is approved today, this room, 9 a.m., April 17th is the commission interview. I wanted to talk a little bit about some best practices here. Tom, earlier you thanked David Hartman for consulting with us on this process. I stole a bunch of best practices that you shared with us, so I'm going to be sharing with you those today. So the review team has already seen these. So for the commission interview, a few things to think about here. One best practice is just to really follow that evaluation rubric for question generation. So the review team has been like super conscientious about having the information we're collecting from the applicant teams be tied back to the rubric in some way. And so that is all information that you have and that I'll be providing you if we get to that stage next week. We would ask the commission to please review the application and all the attachments for the school before that commission interview. I think most, if not all of you have already done that. It's an awful lot of reading. It's a long document. Review the consensus recommendation from the review team. So that is something that you all saw in your committees already. So you've already reviewed that, but just knowing that you have that there in preparation for next week. There'll be focus questions, particularly on the areas of concern that we have all generated from the application. That is a draft of questions that I'll be putting together and providing to you. You have the first draft of that already that you've seen. I'll continue to add questions from you that you're giving me to that document for the meeting next week. Certainly use it as a time to ask clarifying questions of the applicant. And then the, kind of final best practices, and this is the one that David really hit home with us, don't let bias influence your review. And again, here's where the rubric is very helpful. Tie back to that. Move us forward a little bit, Amy. So I'm not going to go through all of these, partially because I can't read them. But these are in the public meeting packet that went out. So you all have this too. This is straight from David, do's and don'ts for reviewers. So I would ask that you review these in anticipation of that meeting next week. So finally, if the finalist is approved, we'll have that commission interview. So read the application and all attachments, review the consensus recommendation, preview the questions, come prepared with any other questions you have. Then the public hearing date will be April 30th. Likely at 4:30. And again, I'll get you that location as soon as I have confirmed with one of our venues. And this would be the opportunity for members of the public to offer support, supportive or opposition testimony to the idea of the MOXIE school. And it'll be at USM or SMCC. Need to confirm one of those locations. Any questions about the process? I know we have the vote coming up, but I just wanted to sort of ground us in where we are.
So Lana and I discussed this, and so I'll be here next week here in person. I think it's important for the chair to be here. And I'll also be at the public hearing where I'll basically introduce people, turn it over to Lana, and we're gonna sit and patiently listen to whatever testimony there is, for or against, or neither for or against, or whatever our job is to listen. And we encourage people to participate however they feel on this application at that time. I guess I'm just talking about process here.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lana and I'll be both of them in
Yeah,
person. So
Definitely.
I'll encourage you others to come in person as well, but if not, we certainly encourage you to join us via Zoom. I think it's important to hear multiple perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you, Norm. Before we get to that vote, a few other updates here. Panorama surveys have launched with schools. So huge thank you to Amy for the incredible lift it takes to get those surveys out, and to all of our schools for the incredible lift it takes to get those surveys out into the hands of staff, students, and families. And to ensure those participation rates are good so that the data is valid. We have a real collective goal with the schools of making those surveys just as meaningful as possible, not just something that's on a compliance checklist. And so I'm really grateful for the collaboration with our team, really led by Amy, and the schools to make this a process with that sort of a collective goal in mind to make it meaningful.
I have a process question as well.
Yeah.
This is more of sort of like my experience of having served on marine resources more than on education, but and for example, someone has put in a request for a lease for mussel raft off the coast, right? And the applicant has met all the requirements, of the law for the lease. So you do hold a public hearing, and I've sat in on those as well, where the department goes and meets the public, and people come, and there is opposition to the mussel raft being located off the coast. not for reasons that, you know, that meet the letter of the law, because the lessor meets all the qualifications, but because they don't want to see it, you know, they feel it ruins their view or whatever. And then after the public hearing, then there's a vote to whether that person gets a lease or not. So the long way around the bush on asking this question is, after you have the public hearing, the vote to move this school is based on whether the school has met the criteria, or how much influence is there from the public hearing on whether that school is approved or not.
My answer to that is it would all be part of the body of evidence that the review team and then the commission would review to move the school forward or not. So we're fortunate that we have like a very detailed rubric, and that's what we're going to be mostly basing our decision in. That's what we've said publicly throughout this whole process. And during the interview and the public hearing, issues may be raised that the commission is interested in considering as it relates to the rubric or not as part of the application approval. So does one specific public, testimony or comment have an impact on whether the school is advanced or not? No, it's more of a collection of the full body of evidence.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So I think similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a few of us that have sat in on a number of public hearings like that, and we kind of know the process, but it just, we've had to deal with those things before. I just want to sort of have it clear when we go to do our work.
Yeah.
What is that we're going to be, our expectations of how we handle the public testimony.
Yeah, and there will be testimony that happens or doesn't happen that will be directly related to questions we have about the school based in the rubric. So for example, again, if we sort of move forward today, would the applicant come forward and be able to show a great level of demand for the school during the public hearing or not? I mean, that would be something that would be directly related to our decision-making process.
Is it possible, and I don't know the answer, so is it possible for the applicant to move forward with recommendation or conditions or recommendations for approval?
Yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. So there's a couple ways we could think about that. One is that the applicant could move forward, or let me stop and say this. Any application that is approved has built-in conditions in it. Okay. Because we have about 15 months before the school opens, and we would be requiring any applicant to meet certain milestones and deadlines throughout that time. Right. So around enrollment, acquiring a facility, having enough money to open, right, all the things you would need to be able to open a school. So any approval is conditional. All right. If we approved the MOXIE school, let's say, and that they, did not meet those enrollment, they couldn't find the students that they thought they couldn't find the money that they thought they could, the school wouldn't open.
I see. Okay.
And then on top of that, I would say if the commission, comes to the vote next month and is interested in approving the school with additional conditions.
And I don't know what they would be.
Then we could absolutely, but that is theoretically something that could happen too. Sort of like a renewal can happen with conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Wow, look forward to the process.
It's been great. Truly. A few other quick updates here. I wanted to give you an update on our work with PLT Strategies, which is the communications firm that Norm mentioned earlier. So we've contracted with this organization to support us with communications. They have extensive experience nationally supporting charter schools specifically around messaging. So this spring, they're helping us prepare to share knowledge about charter schools during the Hall of Flags. That'll be later in May. So they're working with each school to create a one-pager that will tell, primarily with an audience of legislators in mind for the Hall of Flags, tell the story of that school. They're also creating 3 additional one-pagers for us to be able to use. So one is around charter schools in general in the state of Maine, just some, facts about charter schools. The other one is about specifically how we think about accountability and holding charter schools accountable. And then the third one is about funding. How are charter schools funded? Because there seem to always be questions about that. And it's not, no school funding is super straightforward. So we're trying to make that as accurate and clear as possible. And so we'll have all of those materials ready on the day of the Hall of Flags to distribute to anyone who passes through and wants to see what's going on with our schools, get some material, have a cookie, should be a fun time. So really happy with their work thus far. They've been great to work with.
Do you think Amy's side-by-side chart would be appropriate for that?
I think that's a great question. I hadn't thought about that.
I think it should be.
We can certainly have that available.
I think it'd be useful to just to compare apples to oranges.
It's a great idea. Thank you. Any other ideas for things we could be using that day or how to make the day a success? Share now or later. I'm all yours.
Are there gonna be kids there or not?
Yes. Schools, not all, some schools are gonna be bringing students. We're trying to make it an interesting day for students too. So
Yeah.
Norm's mentioned this, but we have, assuming that the Senate's in session that day, we're gonna have kids act as pages and do the national anthem. Students from Maine Arts Academy,
Oh, good.
their
Yeah.
string ensemble.
Yeah.
To the national anthem. And then I want to organize, this was actually Travis's idea, some student tours, throughout the building. So
Mhm.
trying to make it a, really good day for everyone. Should be fun. All right. So as you know, we are currently in the 132nd legislative session, and one bill that's come before us was from the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry. It was LD 550, an act to support outdoor agricultural based and hands-on experimental learning in public schools. So it was a bill that was not specifically about charter schools, but it was about outdoor education. And so we had 2 of our schools come and testify. And so I wanted to just thank them publicly for that. Pat Keenan from Means and Lisa Packard from Ecology Learning Center both took time out of their busy schedules to advocate not for charter schools, but really on behalf of all students in Maine and the importance of outdoor education. So it was great to see them and hear from them that day.
And did you mention I provided whoopie pies?
I didn't mention that, but
Yeah.
please do.
Having served on that committee, as you know, you need to take something. So I took whoopie pies for all the members, invited them to the whoopie pie festival.
They really needed it.
It was a great hit.
It was a
They
good
couldn't
moment.
help themselves. They had to open them up and eat the whoopie pies. And by the way, I got a nice email from Bill Pluka, the chair, and said how nice it was to hear people talk about the practical experience.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened to the bill. I haven't followed that, so I don't know.
The last I checked, it was still, nothing happened. It was still sitting.
So. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to announce, and I already shared this with the schools, that we are partnering with the MDOE Office of Federal Programs to provide 3 virtual professional development sessions for the charter schools in particular, charter school personnel in particular this spring. The first one's going to be on April 18th with the ESCA team. So they're going to be answering charter leader questions about the grant application cycles, the performance report and monitoring responses, invoicing, supporting documentation, sort of everything you need to know about ESCA. They're going to be there to help us. They're also going to provide any updates they have about sort of federally what's happening right now. The next 2 sessions, one's going to be with the assessment team, and then the next one's going to be with child nutrition. So I think those will be, I hope, helpful opportunities for kind of the charter leaders specifically to have an avenue to get relevant information. Finally, this is my last update, I promise. Next month, we hope to present the commission's fiscal year 26 budget for your consideration. So our staff has been working really closely with the finance committee to develop 2 budgets for your consideration. One budget keeps us in our current structure, and the other one has us reclassified if that bill was to be considered and go through. So if we are reclassified as a body corporate and politic and public instrumentality, we are saving close to $100,000 in fees annually. And that is fees and overhead combined. Now we assume some additional costs that we wouldn't have. So we would assume some IT costs, payroll insurance. So when it comes down to it, we estimate annually saving about $50,000 to $60,000 through this process. And that's conservative, it might be more. So committees are currently reviewing ideas for how we could reinvest some of those funds into schools. And I'm also going to be working directly with schools and school boards to get their ideas on how that money could be kind of directly reinvested into schools. And that was it for me. Any questions about anything?
Hearing none, thank you, Alana.
Thank you.
I see you've mentioned here media updates, the maple sugar sundae. Is there anything?
Yeah, that was in your packet. It was a
Yeah.
really nice story about
Yeah.
Means. They, do the maple sugaring there. There was a great article about it.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to read that if you haven't had a chance.
So no monthly school data reports and
Not
no
today.
unfinished business. That takes us to new business then. Which is to consider the approval of the review team's recommendation for the MOXIE Public School to be a finalist to open a new charter school in the state of Maine. Would require a motion. Right,
Yes.
so does someone want to make a motion?
And I'm happy to provide context now or during the vote
I
discussion,
think
whatever you
Brian
prefer.
should make the
I
motion.
think we have to have we need a motion before.
I'll make
we-
the motion to move the MOXIE school forward.
Okay, do we have a second?
To move the application, isn't it? Or is it to move the MOXIE school?
They're the only application. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Now discussion. Ryan?
Yeah, I think, we went through the review process. I think they have an impressive team of people from, different walks of life. Virgil is someone who we have seen in front of the Ed Committee when I served on there, well respected in the educational community. They've got someone well respected, I think, in the business community from the Bethel Chamber of Commerce, and well respected in the charter school community as well, and also in curriculum development community. So felt like they really had their bases covered. Are there still some concerns? And certainly if you've read all of my comments, you'll see which ones really need to still be addressed. But if you read all of their comments and concerns, they need to feel like they're going to be able to move forward with at least with our approval at point to be able to go out and really push forward for funding and for reaching out to families. So but it was that application is a daunting application, and they put a lot of work into it. So
Yeah, I'm off the radiation. I don't think it mattered when we were late, but I heard Okay.
I don't think he's commenting on this.
Well,
Can I add to that, Brian?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the review team, so Lee couldn't be here today, but Brian, Lee and I, recommend that the MOXIE school move forward as a finalist. As I said at the beginning, I want to point out that your vote today is not an endorsement of the school. It's a recommendation that the school be moved forward to the final stages of the process, which includes the commission interview and public hearing. The final vote would be in May. So to just quickly kind of summarize, the MOXIE school, as it stands currently in the application, plans to launch in the greater Portland Westbrook area. It'll launch on the site with 120 students, 60 students in 6th grade and 60 students in 9th grade. The plan would be to expand by 2 grade levels each year to reach 420 students in grades 6 through 12 at full capacity. I took a quick blurb from their application to read, which I'll do now. MOXIE intends to be a public school option for any Maine family that is seeking a more learning-centered, flexible public school option. The model uses intentional community-based partnerships and college and career workforce connection to reach Maine's bold aspirations that every Mainer has an unmatched quality of life and good paying job in a vibrant, sustainable, and environmentally responsible economy. And to reach that goal, every graduate will earn a workforce credential or an associate's degree. I know you read a lot more information than that. I just wanted to ground us in kind of a quick blurb about the school.
It's learning centered. What school isn't learning centered?
Sure.
Sounds so good, but I mean, that's the business of a school.
We would hope, right? We would hope.
Yeah.
So the review team identified 4 key strengths in the school. The first one is around program design. We felt that the model was academically rigorous and supportive of a diverse, high-need student population. There was flexible learning within a structured framework that enabled student-centered learning and competency-based mastery. And students were earning college credentials or workforce credentials upon graduation. We also thought a real strength of the application was their operational detail. So there was very comprehensive evidence provided that detailed all their operational components that was required for the application. As Brian mentioned, the third strength was around team capacity. So the founding team is like a highly experienced set of people with a diverse skill set that includes expertise in nonprofit work, district work, Virgil, as Brian mentioned, school-based leadership, K-12 education, higher education, fundraising, knowledge of the Maine context, and workforce development. And then potential fundraising. So the team right now is in the final stages of securing funding from New Schools Venture Fund and Charter School Growth Fund. The review team identified 3 areas where we would like to encourage, if this is to move forward, the commission to ask questions during the scheduled interview for next week. The first of those, as Brian alluded to, is around family and community engagement. So we felt in reviewing the applications that the proposed team has strategies in place for engaging a diverse community. However, the tangible evidence of the engagement is limited. And the target population has shown some hesitancy in engaging with the school. So we want to ask more questions about that. The second piece is we want to ask more questions about their enrollment analysis. So while the applicant references research related to student population growth in their first 2 proposed sites, Greater Portland and Greater Lewiston, we did not see specific data on student enrollment demand in the Greater Portland and Greater Lewiston communities. So we have some questions about student demand. And then finally, the third piece there is around fundraising and facilities. So while the applicant shows promising potential support, as I referenced as one of their strengths, they haven't yet secured firm commitments from funders or outlined a contingency plan in case the expected funding doesn't materialize. So those are the 3 areas where we have additional questions, and we're eager to ask those questions.
but the questions are not limited to that.
Certainly not,
Yes, thank
No.
you.
certainly not.
Any,
A brief summary for me.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, and even if the bill went through for cap on 9, the school would still be allowed to have.
We don't know. I think that's like a real outstanding question. I'm not sure I have the answer for that.
I thought due to timing, it would.
I think that there's a good chance that's true. I'm just not 100% sure to be able to say that. So most likely how the timing of this will work is that if there was to be interest, that bill was to pass, that bill is far further out from passing than what our approval would be. So there
Right.
could be that situation where this approval has already happened and then that bill passes. And I think the question is, what does that mean at that point? And I don't think I have a super clear response to that. We'll have to figure that out.
Especially when they're a year away from this
Yep.
opening.
Exactly.
I would think, I think what we have to proceed and with our responsibilities within our timeframes if this moves forward. And make a decision absent from the politics,
Just put your head.
because that's outside of our control. So we need to, as a commission, function with what is in our control. And if other factors come into play, then we'll have to, as a commission, deal with that at that particular point. Whether it's, we do have the Attorney General that's office is at our disposal. But I think that's all presumptuous at this point. So what we do know is we have this application before us, and I think that's how we should proceed or not proceed based on the quality of the applicant.
And luckily, we are in a state where the, statute around this as it currently stands is pretty clear in terms of what the process is. So we're following that statute.
Right.
Yeah, until it's changed.
Any other questions, comments?
That's good.
I will point out on our homepage, we list 6 values. The first value is excellence. Pursue high-quality schools with excellent student outcomes. The 6th one is innovation. Encourage dynamic, new, and different educational models that expand opportunities for students. I would encourage us to keep those in mind as we review this application.
And I'm not so sure how, if you're a public school and you accept anyone who applies, you end up with a target audience.
There's only so much control you have.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand Baxter, you could make it very clear that the classes will be very hard and upper level in math and science. So, I mean, that's clear and that would eliminate some of the people. I don't know how you would with a school like this.
I think it's similar to every charter school where you make your mission as clear as you can in terms of what you're providing and you see who raises their hand and wants to opt into your school.
Mhm.
And those are the students you accept because you legally need to accept them.
Right.
I mean, 20+% of our kids are on IEPs.
Yeah, but IEP doesn't necessarily mean that they're not right.
Oh, absolutely not. But that's
No.
in terms of their choices.
Well,
But it,
so we have a motion on the floor.
How do you educate? Big part.
So do we have any further discussion here?
What was the question?
Are we ready to?
Oh,
Yeah. Hearing none, then Amy, will you call the roll?
James Ford,
Yes.
Jim Handy,
yes.
Tom Keller,
Yes.
Tori Cornfield,
Yes.
Brian Langley,
Yes.
Norm Higgins,
Yes. It's a unanimous vote to move the process forward.
Okay.
You.
9 a.m. on Thursday.
Okay. I don't think there's any the notification here is on board members' actions. We have some future topics coming up.
Indeed.
Lana, do you want to just review that quick?
Happy to. So a couple pieces coming up in May. The really big one is going to be the new school vote that we just decided to move forward. So that commission interview and that public hearing are going to be really important pieces. Again, the review committee will take the information that we hear in those, combine it with information that we've heard previously, and form a recommendation for this commission to consider. We'll also be in May considering the approval of the commission's budget for fiscal year 26. And we have on the docket to do the ad hoc nominating committee, which doesn't mean the election happens. It means we have the committee selected for May. Those are the big ones coming up. May's the big month. Couple important dates I would note here, if that's okay.
Mhm.
As we hear more about schools' graduations toward the end of the year, we'll be including them on this document. Right now, we have the dates for, oh, actually, they're down there, for Ecology Learning Center and Maine Arts. And again, we'll continue to add to this list as we get more information, but would love to, invite commission members to attend any graduations. And happy to use some time, maybe next month or in committees, kind of coordinating if folks want to go together or sort of distribute attendance among the schools. They're always a really nice time. Those are probably the big things I would take out of the future topics and announcements part.
Okay, anybody have any questions? I was remiss in not mentioning earlier, I have followed up with the communications with the governor's office about the status of commission members, and it's all silent. I haven't heard anything. So I'm not sure what to make of that, but I think it's important that, unless maybe I'm the only one that hasn't heard anything, that could be possibly. That's okay, I guess. But at least I haven't heard anything. Let me put it that way. And if anyone would like to volunteer, let me know to be on the nominating committee. As you're well aware, my term as chair expires this year. So we need a new chair and maybe a new vice chair. I'm not sure where we're at that point. And with that, any other business? If not, I declare the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
At 2:50, Mr. Chair.
I'm going.
Thank you, Norm.
So yeah.